Daniel Rahman knew something was wrong long before he opened the message. The night felt unusually heavy, the kind of silence that pressed against the walls and made every sound sharper. Rain slid slowly down the glass window of his small apartment, blurring the city lights outside. He had been working for hours trying to distract himself with freelance coding projects, but his focus kept slipping. At exactly midnight, his phone vibrated on the desk. The sound echoed louder than it should have. He glanced at the screen, expecting another client notification, but instead saw an unknown number and a short message waiting to be opened. For a moment, he hesitated. Instinct told him this message carried something important, something final. He unlocked the phone and tapped the notification. "I'm sorry you had to find out this way." Below the words was an image attachment. Daniel opened it. The photo showed a brightly lit stage, filled with reporters and cameras. A large screen behind displayed the logo he recognized instantly, a blue spiral design he had sketched years. "I'll go on scrap paper during a late-night brainstorming session." Beneath the logo stood Marcus Hale, dressed in an expensive suit, smiling confidently while shaking hands with investors. The headline across the image read, "Founder and Visionary." Behind the breakthrough platform, Daniel blinked, certain he was misunderstanding what he saw. His breath slowed, then stopped altogether as realization settled in. The platform was theirs. Every feature, every system. Every piece of logic inside it had come from endless nights he and Marcus spent building something they believed would change their lives. But the headline named only one creator. Marcus. Daniel leaned back in his chair, his mind racing through memories that refused to stay quiet. 3 years earlier, life had looked completely different. Back then, success felt possible, almost close enough to touch. He and Marcus had started with nothing but an idea and stubborn determination. They worked out of Marcus's uncle's unused garage, surrounded by old furniture and flickering lights. The place smelled like dust and engine oil, yet to them it felt like the center of the future. Daniel handled the technical side. Coding came naturally to him. It was the one space where he felt confident and understood. Marcus, on the other hand, possessed charm Daniel lacked. He could talk to anyone, convince strangers to listen, and turn small conversations into opportunities. Together, they balanced each other perfectly, or so Daniel believed. They shared everything during those early months: cheap meals, frustration over failed prototypes, and excitement whenever progress appeared. Marcus often said one day, "We'll look back at this garage and laugh." Daniel trusted him completely. They discussed plans as equals, agreeing the company would belong to both of them, 50-50, no matter what happened. As the project grew, so did attention. Small. Investors began showing interest. Emails arrived from companies asking for demonstrations. Daniel worked harder than ever, sleeping only a few hours each night, driven by the thought that their lives were about to change. Then Marcus announced he needed to travel overseas to secure major funding. "It's our big break," Marcus had said, pacing excitedly around the garage. "Investors want meetings in person. I'll handle negotiations. You keep improving the system." Daniel didn't question him. Trust felt natural then. Marcus left on a Friday morning. At first, everything seemed normal. They exchanged messages daily. Marcus described promising discussions and hinted at large deals forming. Daniel continued building updates, proud of every improvement he made. But after a week, Marcus's responses slowed. After 2 weeks, they stopped entirely. Daniel tried calling repeatedly, but the calls went unanswered. Emails returned short replies claiming Marcus was busy finalizing contracts. Something felt off. Yet Daniel convinced himself success simply required patience. Then came the legal notice. It arrived by courier, sealed in an official envelope. Daniel opened it casually, expecting partnership paperwork or investment confirmation. Instead, he found documents stating he had been removed from the company due to insufficient contribution, and breach of internal agreements. The words made no sense. His access to company servers was revoked within hours. Passwords stopped working. Shared accounts disappeared. When he contacted investors, they responded politely but distantly, explaining that Marcus had clarified leadership. Restructuring. Daniel tried reaching Marcus again, but every message went unanswered. Within days, rumors spread online describing Marcus as the sole founder who had carried the project alone. Daniel watched helplessly as his role vanished from the narrative. People he once collaborated with stopped replying. Some assumed he had exaggerated his involvement. Others avoided conflict by staying silent. The worst part wasn't losing money or recognition. It was the feeling of being erased. Weeks turned into months. Daniel searched for jobs, but without proof of ownership, his experience meant little. Interviews ended politely, but without offers. Savings disappeared quickly. He moved into a smaller apartment and sold personal belongings just to cover rent during sleepless nights. He replayed conversations with Marcus, searching for warning signs he had missed. Had Marcus planned this from the beginning? Or had ambitions slowly changed him? Daniel couldn't decide which possibility hurt more. Back in the present, Daniel stared at the photo again. Marcus looked confident, celebrated, admired by strangers who had no idea another person existed behind that success. Applause froze in the captured image. A permanent reminder of what Daniel lost. His phone buzzed again. Another message arrived from the same unknown number. I thought you deserved to know before tomorrow's announcement. Daniel realized someone inside Marcus's company had sent it anonymously. Someone who knew the truth but didn't dare speak publicly. A strange calm settled over him. The shock faded, replaced by clarity. For months, he had tried to move on, convincing himself that letting go was the mature choice. He told friends he was focusing on new opportunities. He tried believing that success and failure were part of life, but seeing Marcus celebrated reopened something deeper than anger. It was injustice. Daniel walked to the window, watching rain fall steadily onto empty streets. Memories flooded back. Promises made in that garage, shared laughter, dreams spoken without fear. Trust had been real to him. Losing the company felt like losing a piece of his identity. He whispered quietly, as if Marcus could somehow hear him across the city. Why? The question echoed without answer. His laptop screen still displayed unfinished freelance code. Lines of logic waiting for completion. For the first time in months, Daniel ignored the work entirely. Instead, he opened old folders stored on his computer. Backups from the early days of development. Files appeared one after another. Prototypes dated years before Marcus claimed ownership. Emails discussing design decisions. Screenshots of late-night progress reports. Evidence of countless hours he had poured into building something meaningful. Daniel realized he still possessed fragments of the truth outside. Thunder rolled across the sky. The storm grew stronger, matching the storm forming quietly inside. He wasn't shouting or breaking things. The anger came differently, controlled, focused, almost cold. He understood now that Marcus hadn't simply taken an idea. He had rewritten history. And history, Daniel thought, could be rewritten again. He sat down slowly, scrolling through files with renewed attention. Each document felt like a piece of himself returning. The more he reviewed, the clearer the betrayal became. Marcus had not acted impulsively. The legal language suggested careful planning. Contracts were modified while Marcus traveled. Ownership transferred silently. By the time Daniel noticed, everything was already decided. The realization hurt, but it also removed confusion. It was not misunderstanding. It was choice. Marcus had chosen ambition over loyalty. Daniel closed the laptop and leaned back, staring at the ceiling. For months, he had felt powerless, drifting without direction. Now a new feeling emerged. Purpose. Not reckless anger. Something sharper. He didn't yet know what he would do, only that the story wasn't finished. The world believed Marcus's version because no one had heard his. Truth still existed, waiting quietly beneath layers of success and applause. Rain continued, falling as midnight passed into early morning. Daniel remained awake, thinking not about revenge at first, but about fairness, about reclaiming what had been taken without acknowledgement, somewhere between exhaustion and determination. A single thought settled firmly in his mind. He would not remain invisible. As dawn slowly approached, Daniel Rahman understood that the betrayal, marking the end of one chapter, might also be the beginning of another. One where silence would no longer protect the person who had wronged him. Months passed after that stormy night, but Daniel Rahman never forgot the image of Marcus standing proudly beside the company they had built together. Life moved forward on the surface. Daniel worked small freelance jobs, fixing bugs for strangers, and building simple websites that barely challenged his skills. The money kept his apartment lights on, but his mind stayed somewhere else. Every evening, after finishing client work, he opened the old folders stored on his computer. Inside those folders lived the truth Marcus had buried. Emails, early versions of the platform, and design notes written long before investors ever appeared. Each file carried a date, a clear sign of who had created the core system. Daniel studied them carefully, organizing everything into new folders. At first it felt like simple record-keeping, but slowly a different purpose took shape. These files were not just memories, they were proof. Marcus's company continued growing. News articles praised the platform as one of the fastest-rising startups in the tech industry. Interviews appeared online where Marcus spoke confidently about innovation and leadership. Daniel watched some of them late at night. Marcus looked polished and calm, answering questions with practiced ease. Anyone listening would believe he had built everything alone. Every time Daniel heard Marcus say the word "my company," something tightened in his chest. Still, revenge did not come immediately. For weeks, Daniel tried to ignore the urge. He told himself that rebuilding his own future mattered more than chasing the past. Yet, the more success Marcus gained, the harder it became to stay silent. The platform Daniel had written now powered thousands of users around the world. Investors poured millions into it. One evening, while reviewing the files again, Daniel discovered something he had forgotten about: a full development archive stored on an external drive. He connected it to his laptop and opened the folder. Inside were the earliest prototypes of the system, rough versions Marcus had never even seen. The timestamps proved Daniel had started building the software months before Marcus claimed the idea publicly. There were also chat logs discussing technical details Marcus barely understood. Daniel stared at the evidence, realizing how powerful it was. With these files, he could expose the entire story for the first time. The idea of revenge became clear. If he revealed the truth at the right moment, Marcus's reputation would collapse instantly. Investors would question everything. The same spotlight that lifted Marcus could turn against him overnight. The thought felt both satisfying and dangerous. Daniel leaned back in his chair, imagining the headlines changing. Instead of praising Marcus, reporters would investigate the real creator behind the platform. Daniel pictured Marcus standing in front of cameras, forced to explain the betrayal. Justice. Daniel thought quietly, but the word did not feel as clean as he expected. The next morning, Daniel began preparing carefully. He organized every piece of evidence into a clear timeline. Emails went into one folder, development files into another. He wrote notes explaining how the system evolved step by step. By the end of the week, he had built a detailed presentation that could prove the truth beyond doubt. Still, he did not release it. Instead, he waited. Marcus's company announced a major event 2 months later. A large investor summit where Marcus would reveal new plans for expansion. Tech media promised full coverage. It would be the biggest moment of Marcus's career. Daniel saw opportunity if he exposed the truth during that event. The impact would be impossible to ignore. The audience would include investors, journalists, and industry leaders. Marcus would not be able to hide behind private statements or quiet negotiations. For days, Daniel worked on refining his plan. He wrote drafts of the speech he imagined giving. Sometimes his words sounded calm and professional. Other times they carried sharp anger he quickly deleted. Late one night, he paused, staring at the screen. Something about the plan unsettled him. Marcus had betrayed him, that much was certain. Yet memories of their early friendship kept returning. Daniel remembered nights when they laughed about impossible dreams and promised never to abandon each other. Back then, Marcus had believed in him completely. When had that loyalty disappeared? Daniel wondered whether Marcus ever felt guilt, or if success had erased those feelings entirely. The question stayed with him until the day he unexpectedly saw Marcus again. A technology conference was taking place across the city. Daniel attended quietly, sitting in the back of the large hall, among hundreds of strangers. Marcus was the main speaker. When Marcus stepped onto the stage, applause filled the room. He looked confident, wearing the same calm smile Daniel remembered from old business meetings. Yet something about him seemed different. His posture was slightly tense, his voice slower than usual. During the presentation, Marcus spoke about innovation, teamwork, and sacrifice. The audience listened carefully as he described the long journey behind the platform's success. Then Marcus said something unexpected. Building something meaningful often costs more than people realize. He told the crowd. The sentence sounded simple, but Daniel noticed the hesitation behind it. For a brief moment, Marcus looked away from the audience as if remembering something difficult. Daniel felt a strange mix of emotions: anger, curiosity, even disappointment. After the talk ended, people gathered around Marcus for photos and questions. Daniel remained seated until the crowd began leaving. Finally, he stood and walked toward the exit. Halfway across the hall, he heard a voice behind him. "Daniel." He stopped. Marcus stood a few steps away. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The years of distance between them felt heavy. Marcus looked tired up close, the confidence from the stage replaced by quiet tension. "I wondered if I'd see you someday," Marcus said slowly. Daniel studied his former friend's face, searching for arrogance or denial. Instead, he saw something else: guilt. "You took everything." Daniel replied calmly. Marcus did not argue. "I know," he said. The simple admission surprised Daniel more than any excuse would have. For a long moment, they stood there, surrounded by strangers who had no idea what history existed between them. Daniel realized the revenge he planned was still possible. The files remained ready. The summit was approaching, but now another thought entered his mind. Marcus knew the truth already, and that made the coming decision far more complicated than Daniel expected. The day of the investor summit arrived faster than Daniel expected. Morning sunlight filled the city, bright and calm, completely different from the stormy night when his anger first took shape. Daniel stood outside the glass building where the event was being held, watching people walk in wearing formal clothes and confident smiles. Large banners displayed the company logo, the same blue spiral he had once drawn without imagining how far it would travel. Seeing it everywhere no longer shocked him. Instead, it reminded him why he had come. Inside his jacket pocket rested a small USB drive. Months of preparation lived inside it. Files, timelines, proof strong enough to change everything. One presentation could expose Marcus in front of investors, journalists, and industry leaders. The truth would spread instantly. Daniel had rehearsed the moment so many times that it felt almost inevitable. He entered the building quietly and blended into the crowd. The hall buzzed with conversation and excitement. Screens displayed promotional videos while staff guided guests toward their seats. Daniel noticed how proudly employees spoke about the company. Many of them were young, hopeful, and clearly believed they were part of something meaningful. For a brief second, Doubt appeared. These people were not part of the betrayal. Yet his actions could affect all of them. Daniel pushed the thought aside and moved backstage using the guest access badge he had received after contacting the event organizers under his real name. They had recognized him as an early collaborator mentioned in older records and invited him to attend. None of them knew what he planned to reveal. Backstage lights felt harsh and warm. Technicians hurried between screens and cables. A coordinator approached him. "You'll have a short presentation slot after the keynote," she said politely. 5 minutes. 5 minutes to rewrite the story. Daniel nodded and waited near the curtain. From his position, he could hear Marcus speaking on stage. Applause followed each announcement as Marcus described new partnerships and future expansions. His voice sounded confident, but Daniel noticed small pauses between sentences. Signs of pressure invisible to the audience. Daniel's heartbeat grew louder. As his turn approached, he removed the USB drive from his pocket and held it tightly. This was the moment he had imagined for months. Every sleepless night, every organized file, every painful memory led here. He pictured what would happen next. The presentation would appear on the giant screen. Evidence would unfold step by step. Reporters would react instantly. Investors would question Marcus. The world would finally know who created the platform. Justice. The word returned again. But this time it felt heavier. The coordinator signaled him. "You're up next." Daniel stepped toward the stage entrance. Bright light spilled through the curtain. The audience waited on the other side, unaware of what was coming, as he walked forward. Memories rushed through him, not only the betrayal, but the beginning. 2 young men working in a garage, laughing over impossible dreams. Marcus encouraging him when early versions failed. Long nights filled with hope instead of competition. Daniel realized something unexpected. Revenge had kept him tied to the worst moment of his life. Every plan, every thought revolved around proving someone wrong instead of building something new. If he exposed Marcus publicly, the truth would come out. But what would remain afterward? Would humiliation truly heal the years he lost? Or would it only replace one pain with another? He reached the center of the stage. The audience applauded politely, expecting a standard guest presentation. Marcus stood to the side, surprised and tense as their eyes met. For a moment, silence existed only between the two of them. Daniel connected the USB drive to the computer. The screen lit up. His finger hovered over the file containing the evidence presentation. One click would begin everything he had planned. He hesitated. In that pause, Daniel understood something clearly. Revenge promised satisfaction, but it also meant defining himself forever by betrayal. The truth mattered, but how it was revealed mattered more. He selected a different file. A simple slide appeared on the screen with calm words. "Great ideas are built by more than one person." The audience leaned forward, curious. Daniel began speaking, his voice steady. He told the story of collaboration, describing how innovation often comes from shared effort. He explained his role honestly, presenting proof of his contributions. Without accusation or anger, facts replaced blame. Respect replaced humiliation. Whispers spread through the audience as people realized what he was revealing. Journalists began taking notes. Investors exchanged surprised looks. Marcus lowered his head slightly, understanding what Daniel had chosen to do. There was no attack, no dramatic exposure, only truth spoken openly. Daniel finished by saying, "Recognition matters, but so does integrity. Success should never erase the people who helped create it." The hall remained quiet for a moment, before applause slowly began, not loud or explosive, but thoughtful. Daniel stepped away from the microphone, feeling lighter than he expected. The anger he carried for months no longer pressed against his chest. He had reclaimed his voice without destroying another person publicly. After the presentation, discussions spread quickly. Investors requested meetings. Company leaders began reviewing internal records. The truth moved forward on its own, guided by evidence rather than revenge. Marcus approached Daniel backstage later, his expression sincere. "You could have ruined me," Marcus said quietly. Daniel nodded. "Maybe, but that wouldn't have fixed anything." Marcus accepted the words without argument. In the weeks that followed, the company restructured leadership. Daniel received official recognition and new opportunities opened for him. Marcus stepped down from his position, acknowledging mistakes publicly. One evening, Daniel sat by his apartment window again, watching rain fall gently across the city. The same sound that once fueled his anger now felt peaceful. He realized revenge had seemed powerful because it promised control over pain. But real closure came from choosing who he wanted to become after betrayal. The past could not be changed. But his response to it shaped the future, and as the lights outside reflected softly against the glass, Daniel understood the lesson that stayed with him long after the conflict ended. Revenge may feel like victory in the moment, but truth spoken with clarity brings something far greater: freedom.